All right, here we go. Clark Ashton Smith. Uh, he's often part of that little trio of Robert E. Howard and H.P. Lovecraft as a Weird Tales writer. Um, Wrote a lot of poetry. Actually, started out as a poet prodigy as a kid, but then later kept writing poetry as he did these weird tales to make money. Straight up, he's probably one of the best writers that's ever lived. And what I mean by that is that this dude was on another level. There's nobody that writes like this dude. I don't know how to say it if you read his stuff. Very florid, but good. Yeah? I keep saying that maybe like early Anne Rice was probably the closest to this style, but it's more than that, and he specializes particularly in decadence and decay in his stories, and it's amazing that it's all the more effective that many of his stories take place in fantasy worlds, other worlds that are not even historical. I mean, it's what else can I say? Let me just get into his poetry. Okay, most of this book, this is a really good, edition of his work. Um, his short stories make up the bulk of it, but also his poetry is in the back. It's included. Prose poems. His prose poems are probably some of the best prose poems of poetry I've ever read in my life. I'm not just saying that. Right. All right, we'll go into some of them, and then I'll cover some of the verse, the poems after. The Memnons of the Night. Ringed with a bronze horizon, which at a point immensely remote seems welded with the blue brilliance of a sky of steel, they oppose the black splendor of their porphyritic forms to the sun's insuperable gaze. Reared in the morning twilight of a primeval time, by a race whose towering tombs and cities are one with the dust of their builders, in the slow lapse of the desert, they abide to face the terrible latter dawns that move abroad in a starkness of fire, consuming the veils of night on the vast and sphinx-like desolations. Level with the light, their tenebrific brows preserve a pride as of Titan kings. In their lidless, implacable eyes of staring stone is the petrified despair of those who have gazed too long on the infinite. Mute as the mountains from whose iron matrix they were hewn, their mouths have never acknowledged the sovereignty of the suns, that passed in triumphal flame from horizon onto horizon of the prostrate land. Only at eve, when the west is like a brazen furnace, and the far-off mountains smolder like a ruddy gold in the depths of the heated heavens. Only at eve, when the east grows infinite and vague, and the shadows of the waste are one with the increasing shadow of night. Then, and then only, from the sullen throats of stone, a music rings to the bronze horizon, a strong, a somber music, strange and sonorous, like the singing of black stars, or a litany of gods that invoke oblivion. A music that thrills the desert to its heart of stone, and trembles in the granite of forgotten tombs, till the last echoes of its jubilation, terrible as the trumpets of doom, are one with the black silence of the infinite. Oh, you see what I'm saying? Alright, I'll go here too. A little dramatic prose poem. I gotta be careful with this one. Scene. Right? The catacombs of the ancient city of Umal. A new corpse has been deposited alongside a skeleton, which from its moldiness and worm-picked appearance seems of considerable antiquity. The corpse. How now, old bare bones? What word of the worm? Methinks you have known him well in your time. The skeleton. Aye, and so will you. 'Tis a world of creditors, of which the tomb and the worm are the last. There is little left for the devil, when these have taken their due account. The vermin is a very and will have his last ounce of brain and marrow. Has spared me never a scrap of flesh, nor a tatter of skin against the mouldy breath of the cavern wind, nor aught save the jawbone to stop the dithering of my teeth. The corpse. You speak so dismally. To change the theme, let us talk of our former lives. The skeleton. Willingly, though as for myself, I have fear my memories have grown a trifle musty from 500 years, more or less in the air that is rotten with the dead. However, for the dust that has settled amongst the bones of my throat, I bethink me that I was once a taverner, and for capacity was not the least of mine own puncheons. Often sith have I thirst for even a quart in lieu of these former tunfuls. Time is a cheating merchant. He has given me this modicum of mold in exchange for a noble corporosity. Death, you will find, is a dull business and without profit, despite the number of traffickers. The corpse. Where then, with their multiform splendors, are the heavens of light and hells of fire promised unto faith by the Sibyls and Hierophants? The skeleton. Ask of yonder cadaver, him whose corpulence diminishes momentarily for the pampering of worms. He was once a priest, and spoke authentically of these matters, with all the delicate thunder of gods. As for myself, I have found nothing beyond this narrow charnel vault, in whose lethal night are bred the vapors of pestilence, that wander forth to swell our number with the living, and rise from the rotten earth for an incense to the very sun. The corpse. 'Twas the pestilence that sent me here from my marriage bed. I was an optimate of Umar, yet they have thrust me away to rot among the common rogues. The skeleton, sympathetically, and in a tone less like the grating of bones than heretofore. Too bad, too bad. Albeit I am long beyond the flesh myself, I commiserate you. The brides are bony, and the bedfellows cold. That you are like to find here, even though you lie till the death-light glimmers within your eye sockets for the sparkling of lust. The corpse. Find we there no recompense, no meed of wisdom holding on to death, nor the secrets buried from the sun in the deep night of charnels? The skeleton. We have wisdom if you like, a dull and dusty wisdom, and I would give it all for a good draught of Chian wine. Perchance 'tis something to know that bodies are made of dust and water, the last of which is evaporable, and the former capable of dissolvement. For this is all our knowledge, in spite of much that is known and spoken of hierophant and philosopher. However, unlike the law and wisdom of these, it may be contained without discommodation by one skull. From the crypts of memory. Aeons of aeons ago, in an epoch whose marvelous worlds have crumbled, and whose mighty suns are less than shadow, I dwelt in a star whose course, decadent from the high irremeable heavens of the past, was even then verging upon the abyss, and which said astronomers, its immemorial cycle should find a dark and disastrous close. Ah, strange was that gulf-forgotten star, how stranger than any dream of dreamers in the spheres of today, or than any vision that has soared upon visionaries in their retrospection of the sidereal past. There, through cycles of history, whose piled and bronze-writ records were hopeless of tabulations, the dead had come to outnumber infinitely the living. And built of stone that was indestructible save in the furnace of suns, their cities rose beside those of the living, like the prodigious metropoli of Titans, with walls that overgloomed the vicinal villages, and over all was the black funeral vault of the cryptic heavens, a dome of infinite shadows, where the dismal sun, suspended like a sole enormous lamp, failed to illumine, and drawing back its fires from the face of the irresolvable ether, threw a baffled and despairing beam on the vague remote horizons and shrouded vistas illimitable of the visionary land. We were a somber, secret, many-sorrowed people, we who dwelt beneath the sky of eternal twilight pierced by the towering tombs and obelisks of the past, and our blood was the chill of the ancient night of time, and our pulse flagged with the creeping prescience of the lentor of Leth. Over our courts and fields, like invisible sluggish vampires born of mausoleums, rose and hovered the black hours, with wings that distilled a malefic languor, made from the shadowy woe and despair of perished cycles. The very skies were fraught with oppression, and we breathed beneath them as in a sepulchre, forever sealed with all its stagnancies of corruption and slow decay and darkness, impenetrable save to the fretting worm. Vaguely we lived and loved as in dreams, the dim and mystic dreams that hover upon the verge of fathomless sleep. We felt for our women with their pale and spectral beauty, the same desire that the dead may feel for the phantom lilies of Haldean meads. Our days were spent in roaming through the ruins of lone and immemorial cities, whose palaces of fretted copper and streets that ran between the lines of carven gold obelisks lay dim and ghastly with the dead light, or were drowned forever in seas of stagnant shadow. Cities whose vast and iron-builded fanes presumed their gloom of primordial mystery and awe, from which the simulacra of century-forgotten gods looked forth with unalterable eyes to the hopeless heavens, and saw the ulterior night, the ultimate oblivion. Languidly we kept our gardens, whose grey lilies concealed a necromantic perfume that had the power to evoke for us the dead and spectral dreams of the past. Or wandering through ashen fields of perennial autumn, we sought the rare and mystic immortelles, with somber leaves and pallid petals that bloom beneath willows of wan and veil-like foliage, or wept with the sweet and nepenthe-laden dew by the flowing silence of acheronatic waters. And one by one we died, and were lost in the dust of accumulated time. We knew the years as a passing of shadows, and death itself as the yielding of twilight unto night. Oh man, you see what I'm saying? You see what I'm getting at? Man. Let me get to some of the verse poems. Of course, I like this one. The Abomination of Desolation is it's actually kind of funny. A little sense of humor. But we'll just do some poems here. The last night, I dreamed a dream. I stood upon a height, a mountain's utmost eminence of snow, beholding ashen plains outflung below, to a far sea horizon dim and white. Beneath the spectral sun's expiring light, the world lay shrouded in a deathly glow. Its last fear-laden voice a wind came low. The distant sea lay hushed as with a fright. I watched until the pale and flickering sun, in agony and fierce despair, flamed high, and shadow slain went out upon the gloom. Then night, that war of gulf-born Titans won, impended for a breath on wings of doom, and through the air fell like a falling sky. Let's see. Maybe you want to see me doing pages here. There we go. Memnon at midnight. Methought upon the tomb-encumbered shore, I stood of Egypt's lone monarchical stream, and saw immortal Memnon throned supreme, in gloom as that of the Memphian night of yore. Fold upon purpureal he wore, beneath the star-born canopy extreme, carven of silence in a colossal dream, where waters flowed like sleep forevermore. Low in the darkness, thick with the dust of years, how many a ghostly god around his throne, with thronging wings that were forgotten fames, stood ere the dawn restored to ancient ears the long withholden thunder of their names, and music stilled to monumental stone. Alright, let's got one more. Yeah, this is the one he was famous for. This thing is long. Alright, we shall meet once again in the strange and latter summers, and recall, like olden mummers, an old play of love and pain. I shall greet you not with kisses of the days aforetime knowing, these would fall vain as those of phantoms blowing nightward to the last abysses. Faint perfume will attend you, like a scrine in prose and myrrh, and my dreaming heart where fallen autumn stir, have their fallen light will lend you. From the tomb love shall rise, mutely in a spectre's fashion, to the seeming lamps forever bleak and ashen of our necromantic eyes. But no tear shall we weep, knowing tears are void and vain, like the scattered drops of rain on desert iron sleep. Chill and sere like the grass, flapping in a field of snow, we shall know that nothing mattered, as we tell our faded woe ere we pass. Yeah, that's Clark Ashton Smith.